good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. This morning, I have the pleasure of chatting with Maurisa Gibson, who is a sports scientist. This morning, we're talking about sports in Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. It's Maurisa Gibson-Bailey. I don't want my husband to be obsessed with me. Yeah? All right.
No problem. Well, we want to welcome you here to Tobago Updates this morning as we chat about sport. So, first off, tell us about some of the work that you have been doing here in Trinidad and Tobago.
All right. In the past, I would have established Playground to Podium. We'd have done some conferences as well as some seminars. We've done a bit in Tobago as well. That's where we had Dr. Barry Fudge, who was my mentor at the time, because he's Mufara, the long distance runner that you have from Great Britain. That was his physiologist. So we had him in Tobago. We've dealt with students as well as coaches. Also working with, in the past, national athletes across the board. I used to work at a sport company as well, where I did physiological testing of athletes. Currently in the national space, dealing with the secondary schools, working with at risk youth, sorry, and exposing them to sports that they're not accustomed to. For example, golf, swimming in the past. These are sports that youths within that diaspora will not be able to have access to because of maybe expensive equipment, or maybe that is not the catchment area most coaches want to focus on. Apart from that, I'm currently in research with Leeds Beckett University, and it's a research coming up actually that I want to be able to do in Trinidad and Tobago with children 11 to 12 years old. And that's something I want to talk about before we leave.
Excellent. And when we talk about youth participation in sports and actually getting into the science behind the sport and healing, have you collaborated with any entities here in Tobago presently, like the Division of Education or even the Division of Community Development, Youth Development, and Sport?
It's very funny that you asked that question, because there's a bit of contention with that issue. 2 years ago, it could be a year and a half, I had applied for a research grant through the ministry, the division, sorry, of education, and tick all the boxes. And the response I got back was that actually it was an actual document that stated that I don't have ties to Tobago and that I'm not living in Tobago, and therefore I could not get access to such grant. And I was taken aback by that. Um, I want to stick a pin there because this is one of the issues that that would turn nationals who have the capacity, who have the ability to make an impact or want to be able to contribute to development of sporting people. Up to now, that issue of me not having ties to Tobago, and mind you, I am from the village of Plymouth, that I don't have ties to Tobago, and I don't live in Tobago, and that does not qualify me to have or to have access to grants. Um, this is not the first issue, but it is not the point of your question. But I just wanted to bring that. I am open to and very willing to work with any entity when it relates to the development of sport in the island. I am a past athlete, and many of Tobagonians, or a few, may know me from playing sport from since I'm small, going through Scarborough as well. So I am very willing to work with because I have so much ideas, and the network that I have built over the last 12 years could be able to contribute, whether it is a small percentage or large. I know that I can contribute to the development of sport and sport development in Tobago.
Excellent. And it's interesting that you brought up that education grant there from Datas because There are specific criteria for that one. Specifically, that persons who receive the grant should come back to Tobago and give obligatory service for the amount of money that they would have been given. I believe that what you should have embarked on was a scholarship from the Office of the Chief Secretary. That's the one where you're not obligated to come back or you're not obligated to give back. So, and I think that it's a wider issue of persons not necessarily understanding the different opportunities that are available. There are grants and then there are scholarships, and everything have different obligations and requirements. But I hope that you guys can get over that. And as you said, you can come and contribute and, be able to even understand what is being offered so that you can educate other persons on some of the areas for financing to study, whether it be within the region or internationally, that they can benefit from. But there's a bigger conversation happening in regards to how the Tobago culture feeds into athletic performance of young
Right.
persons. How do you think that the Tobago culture has affected positively and or negatively how the Tobago athletes have been able to perform?
I would first give you from my own personal perspective. Being an athlete on the island and knowing that you always have to go to Trinidad for training or you have to go to Trinidad for national trials and all of that, that in itself, I believe, needs to change. I think that Tobago could have its own contingent and there should be, how to say, there should be accommodation for that on the national scheme of things. I believe that Tobago has a lot of talent, unmatched talent, that even if you have to add the aspect of sports science to it, but more importantly, as you talk about culture, I think that, and I always want to start off, I would always want to end positive, but let me begin with the negative, is that we have to get away from this culture of quote unquote blocking persons or running persons away. That's the first thing, because there are so many individuals that could be able to contribute. There are so many persons who studied sport management. Where are they? Where are all the professionals that we should be able to incorporate and create that support team that Hakeem needs at this time, that Jareem speaks about when he talks about the support that is required. If we are to compete on the international scale, we have to get it together. We have to make sure that, one, our culture of thinking, our mindset has to change. We cannot, for whatever petty or personal reason, just because we feel that we don't like this person. And sometimes when you get to the bottom of the issue, it has nothing to do with the professional nature of that person. It's more personal that they bring to the forefront. So to me, that is part of the culture that I want us to get away from. We need to incorporate more self-reflection. And I think that is the basis of everything. Before we start pointing at other person, before we start, critiquing, before we start developing anything, we have to take a sound look at ourselves. What do we want? What are our goals? What are our talents? What do you need to contribute? Because if we know ourselves, then there's no reason for you to block another person. We are all walking different paths. We all have different talents, and we all have to contribute in some way to the purpose of what God has put us here for. So for me, I would stop there at first, that culture of blocking this person, or you think that this person should not be here. That is the first thing, because sport in itself is not going to change. The phenomenon is not going to change, right? The aspects of developing sports would evolve, yes, but in order for us to ride on that wave, we have to take self-reflection as to where we are, who we are, what do we want out of this, see where the world is going, how far are we. Self-reflection for me is really important, and that is part of the culture that we need to start looking within. We need to start looking within, not be so offensive about feedback. Don't be defensive about if someone has to say, listen, this is not working. Yes, we have to look at the tone. Yes, we have to look at how we say things, but sometimes the truth needs to be said.
I'm
And
glad
you
that you
have
mentioned that because there's a bigger conversation happening about Trinidad and Tobago not bringing back any medals from the Olympics. Tell us how that feeds into your idea of looking at yourself as opposed to pointing the finger at others.
First of all, I like to put this out there that any athlete that qualifies for the Olympics, that's a great achievement in the first place. It is the place where all individuals who I would always deem them as superhumans because their physiology is different from that of the average person, that they have done exceptionally well. But you have to know going into the Olympics, level playing field, that you got to bring your A game. The objective is either you got to medal, everybody wouldn't medal, but you have to understand the psychology of it. Um, in terms of not meddling, I want to take a little stint from what Jareem has said, what the Minister of Sport has said, and even looking at the interview with Hakeem. Not meddling takes a lot of factors. Now, sports in itself and sport performance, there's so many factors that you have to take into consideration. And sometimes um, you don't put your hand on actually what is that factor that contribute to you mounting that podium in first, second, and third place. What I would say is that we have to put things in place for elite athlete preparation. We bandy about the terminology of elite performance, high performance, but do we really understand what those terminology mean and what it takes to put resources in places? Because if we understand high performance and we understand elite performance, then our support team would not be reduced only to a medical practitioner who's interested in sport, a physiotherapist, a massage therapist, a personal trainer, and the coach. It takes more. It takes more than that. It takes sports biomechanics, it takes sports physiology, it takes sports psychology. And it's not just only 4 months before, it's not only 6 months before. A training cycle or an Olympic cycle doesn't only limit itself to 4 years. And it depends on the goals, it depends on the objective of where the Olympic Committee or where the sport wants to go, or where the sport sees itself. Now, um, people have spoken about we are a small country and comparing um, to those bigger countries. As long as you put your foot in the Olympic game, you are obligated or you are at the point of where you're going to be compared. What you have to do as a small nation is make a big impact, right? And I think that, understanding a lot of the factors that the Olympic Games require, not just only the Olympic Game, but the Commonwealth, those marquee events require a lot of resources. And we have to ask ourselves, are we really ready? Are we really ready? Because if we're ready, I'll go back to the mindset. We wouldn't be running our professionals. We would not, we would embrace, because the more we are together, the more united we are, and the more that we encompass different views, because it's the different views and people not agreeing at that level helps. It's not a negative thing, because when everybody is saying yes, something's wrong. And the British people will tell you that, because I'm in that environment where you have difference of opinion. These are the things that sharpen the expert views of others so that you look at things differently. It takes a different mindset of your support staff, and it takes a different mindset to be medaling at the Olympics as well. I say hats off to all the athletes who have made the effort, and we understand that innate effort takes us that far. Where are we with sports science in this country? Where are we? Why are we not embracing it? Why are we not doing more so that our elite athletes, who are few in number, could be able to have access to that and proper sports science intervention so that you take the athlete to the next level? That is the type of competition that we're dealing with. Because every country, whether it be Canada, whether it be the USA, and mind you, Jamaica, as well as in Barbados, they're dealing with sports science as well. There's a sports science through UE. There is that space that they're doing physiological testing. What are we doing?
Right. And what I want to find out from you is what are some of the policies that you think can immediately see a drastic improvement in the performance of Tobago-based athletes?
Um, this is the thing about me with policy. They're beautifully written on paper. It's the execution. And I think that we have failed in the execution of policy, because policy is not just only about execution, it's about monitoring and evaluating. And how often have we reviewed things that are not working? We have the sport company. How many evaluation, or how are we assessed? Are we reviewing what sport company is doing from the elite perspective? What are they doing? Are we assessing? And I believe that Tobago, in its own space, could create that elite athlete development program. And I say this because you have the hyperbaric chamber in the countryside that could be used to assist as well. You have spaces that you can create. You don't need a huge space for a physiological lab. Look at this place in Plymouth, where you have the field, you have the playground next door. It is where the deaf and dumb school were there. They were there at a point in time. That building, you are next to the playground. You have the beaches close by. You could create a product, and I'm saying, if you have the professionals, right? Any policy that you've written that this should be done, it's the execution. It is the implementation aspect of it. Do you have resources to back it up? Are you going to follow through with it? Are you going to make sure that personal issues do not interfere with the rollout of policies that you would have nicely written, or you would have taken from different policy documents, international documents, position statements that you've taken from across the world, so that you'll want to follow?
Understood. We're going to take a quick break right here and we're going to come back and we're going to continue the discussion. See you soon. Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. This morning we have been chatting with Mrs. Bailey on sport this morning. Thank you so much for rejoining us. You spoke before we left for the break about establishing and developing departments and units that are specifically focused on that elite athlete performance. But one of the elements even of that athletic performance has to do with that athlete's mental health. And having those psychologists involved, those sports psychologists. Tell us about the importance of that aspect of the sport.
I think it's really important. I look at this cricketer that killed himself. It's alleged, but I believe that mental health is really crucial. Just the mere fact of having support from the public, and that positive vibration, that positive feedback is really important. Jeremy spoke at length about it, in the sense of, you're giving your effort, you're giving 100%, and the critics and getting that negative feedback is really important, is really detrimental to them going forward, or for them giving their effort going forward. Psychologists are really important because they help athletes to visualize sometimes their performance, especially when they have injury, but also visualize the positivity to the end goal. In working at many points with psychologists, even how other sports scientists as well as support staff interact with athletes, we have to be very cognizant of how we deal with athletes, and understanding the impact of mental health, and how your interaction with them, how that affects them, their past, their what is going on in their life currently, the things that they're not able to overcome, their fears, their insecurities. These are things that sometimes, most times for some people, that they inhibit performance. Um, there's so many factors that affect mental health, and I think that, one, being very truthful about your insecurities, being truthful about what affects you, being truthful about what motivates you, also would help the sports psychologist, or would help the therapist to help help you to move forward. I always like to talk about unmet childhood needs. And these are things that don't go away if we don't address it. Most of us as adults, we do have unmet childhood needs that need to be addressed. And these are the things that continue to plague our performance or plague the things that we want to achieve. And I think that it would inherently entwine with mental health. If you don't address it, it would affect. There is a physiological response to not dealing with mental issues. I'll give you a personal, feed in the sense that there were certain things that used to affect me. Like, you have people talking negative about you, or sometimes they never had any dealings with you, but they wouldn't like you because that term of a relational aggression. Someone would tell them something, and that person is not going to like you. And it affects some people. It affected me. But when you're able to dig deep within yourself and recognize that it doesn't come from you, it is not from you, and you have to accept that that is who other people are. These are some of the things that you're able to override, you're able to get past, so that it doesn't affect your own performance in the long run. So this may be minute, but it really impacts the lives of people who don't address it and recognize that, listen, this is not you. This is not, you are not to be culpable for that. That is on others. And therefore, in seeing that and understanding that, embracing that, you're able to step on. But that is not the only thing that's going to affect you. And I would want to say that in the sense that apart from, the negativity from the public when it comes to athletes, I would say this to the public. When we have local sporting activities, what helps the athletes is a full stadium. And you would listen to Olympic athletes in the immediate interview, and they would talk about how the crowd would either motivate, and they have to be able to put in practice what the psychologist would have taught them to do, which is to focus and to control their emotions. Um, how we could contribute as a nation is attending local sporting events and give the athlete, prepare the athlete for the international stage from that perspective. Because when you're accustomed from a psychological perspective, competing in crowd with a packed stadium, that is one aspect of sport performance that you're going to conquer. Therefore, going at the Commonwealth Games or going at international meet, then you're not going to be able to have to jump over that hurdle of having the large crowd. Because when you have a lot of people in a space, the vibration and frequency is different. The vibration and frequency could distort your own personal vibration and frequency. And that's another conversation to have when we look at things that we can't see.
Right. And with all the knowledge that you have gathered as a sports scientist, what is it exactly that you would say you want to contribute back to Tobago?
I want to be able to contribute to Tobago in terms of having our own sports science center. It may be small, it should be small. And we should use that as part of a package to the European market, that you could take them away from the cold. You come into the sun. Mind you, there is benefits in drinking coconut water and being exposed to the sunlight. I think that with my expertise and as an accredited sports scientist in the region, that if we have that small space and that we have the resources to back that up, I kid you not, give me 10 or 15 young persons who would have studied sport, that would have studied physical education, we would make them sports scientists as well. Because with the British Association of Sport and Exercise Science, I'm at the point where I could be able to mentor other sports scientists as well. We know that in Tobago, without even doing any assessment, that there are persons with the potential. You look at their parents, the genetic disposition, right? You look at persons who are across Tobago, whether you've gone into the gym, you look at the form, the physical attributes, there is something to work with. Imagine doing that. The effort that has been done so far, I applaud that. Imagine taking it another step with sports science. The network, so that you have other sports scientists like myself from my network that would be able to assist, who would love to come to the Caribbean to assist. We mentor. So it's not just keeping the knowledge, it is about mentoring others, because we are not here to turn to stone. You see how life is. One day you're here, next day you're not. And what are you going to do with that knowledge? Right? I have been in the sporting fraternity for more than 15 years. I've seen it. I've worked in different aspects, from the Ministry of Sport, Sport Company, Division of Sport, right? Ministry of Education. And it is the same thing. When are we going to get out of that cycle? Right? I am willing to give back, regardless of what the obstacles I have faced in the past. I believe that I would call it the Joe Biden effect. You recognize that the impact that you can have in the future, you recognize that you need to give room for the younger ones. Step aside.
All right, and I want you to leave your contact information if anyone wants to reach out to you, and encourage the Begonians to get involved in that sports science as well.
Yes, thank you.
I
The
said,
number is, yes, 372-6751. Again, the number is 372-6751. Let this Olympics be our reflective point. And today, do I speak to you? Get up and get. Stop running your professionals. Embrace others to come home. Embrace others to contribute. We have to reflect on the fact that we need to be able to get to the next level. And to get to the next level, we cannot do it in isolation.
all right, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on this morning and telling us about all that you have been doing when it comes to sport and sport science. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to be back right after this. See you soon, guys.